Morning. I'm gonna get a little bit of a head start on my walk today. It's a little bit of a misty morning, which is kind of nice. Starting to cool down a little bit here in Maryland. Today, I kind of want to talk about controlling the things that you can control, and then also using logic and emotion together and seeing them as tools rather than something that you're stuck with, right? I think some people tend to think that, oh, I'm just an emotional creature, or oh, I'm just all logic, I'm all logic, but I think that's kind of short-sighting yourself and closing you off to actually being able to use a balance of tools to help you deal with situations. And I say that from firsthand experience. And I'll tell you, like, when I was younger, when I was a teenager and into my early 20s, my emotions like ran wild. I was quick to anger, quick to get sad, quick to get happy. Like, everything was just like, I felt every single situation at like the point of entry. So like, it's the point of impact of a situation, you tend to feel it, the emotions first, right? Like, your first reaction isn't to logically work through a situation. We sort of feel those emotions, and then hopefully we can step back and logically use those emotions as a tool for our logic to kind of work through and assess and get through the situation. But with when I was younger and emotions kind of controlled everything, I made a lot of rash decisions. I held on to a lot of grudges. It was unfair to myself. It was unfair to people around me, and I just wasn't able to see situations and long-term like paths through situations, because I feel like when it's all kind of emotionally driven, everything is in the kind of in the short term, right? Well, then as I started kind of getting into adulthood and I was tired of dealing with things that way, I swung all the way to the other side and got super caught up in, like, everything has to be logical. Everything's black and white. It's right or wrong. And it was almost kind of like emotionless. And then even that, it got to the point where I was sort of isolating myself from people and situations, and I wasn't able to understand where they were coming from because they were involving emotions. And at the point where I was at in my life, I was like, no, like, dealing with that emotions that's reckless, and you just need to look at it this way, and everything's got to be like a mathematical equation for life. So I really worked on finding the balance, and I feel like when I started approaching more of the balance and seeing emotions and logic as tools rather than like how I had to be, it started to make a huge difference. And tied into that is also ego. Like, I went through a time in my life where I was trying to kill ego, and I realized that ego is actually one of the most amazing tools that we as human beings have if we understand how to use it properly. Because it's like anything else. I think ego is a tool. And think about this: like, if you send somebody into a woodworking shop and don't give them any directions and tell them to make a kitchen's worth of cabinets, chances are they're probably going to cut their finger off. They're probably going to hurt themselves because they don't understand how to use the tools. But when you actually teach them how to use the tools, and they put some time in practicing to use those tools, then they can start to create beautiful works of art, right? So I kind of feel like that's how things go with emotion, logic, and ego. But to keep things a little simpler with emotion and logic, is that kind of the way that I deal with things is, like I said earlier, point of impact. When a situation arises, the first thing that's going to kind of hit you is that wave of emotions. And rather than trying to push those away, I just absorb them and try to give them some respect, because to me, that's kind of like my compass. Like, okay, how do I feel about this situation? And then I'm able to step back. And that gets into sort of the idea of perception levels, right? And I feel like immediate perception level tends to be mostly emotional. And that's where we're kind of blinded a little bit, like our view and our window is a little closed off. So once we sort of know what we're looking at, what we're feeling, then we can step back a little bit to a little bit of a wider perception level, right? Wider. And you can see more of the picture, and then you can allow your logic and your intellect to come into play and help you navigate through those situations. And that's kind of when you can play with that, then it's a lot easier to look at the things that you can control and the things that you can't control, right? So I'll give you another personal example of some of the stuff that I've been going through recently. Is with starting this new business and getting my gym up and running. You know, I went in, I basically had an empty space with a bathroom, and so I wanted to add another bathroom, a shower, an office, and then that's it. Everything else is just, you know, artificial turf, rubber flooring, equipment. And I thought it was going to be pretty straightforward, pretty simple, and the contractor that I hired thought it was going to be pretty simple and pretty straightforward. Well, you know, come to find out, it's been a little tougher. Like, because keeping it short, like because we were changing the use of occupancy, the permitting process was much tougher when it came down to getting the actual building permits to start. It took us almost 3 months to be able to go through that process. But, you know, like initially my contractor, they had submitted drawings, the plans got rejected, and, you know, like the county wanted more of a design professional, not just, you know, hand drawn or kind of home CAD drawn, right? They wanted actual like commercial architect. Well, my contractor thought if they just made some adjustments to the drawings and resubmitted, that would be fine. Well, those got rejected again, and I think it actually pissed off the county inspector. So the contractor's like, you know, it was a tough situation for me because I'm sitting here like spinning my wheels in a space that I'm now paying rent for, and I want to get things moving forward so I can start helping people change their lives. And my contractors were trying to blame everybody else, like, oh, well, you know, like the county's being unfair, and, you know, I've done jobs like this before and they didn't require this. And it was a lot of excuses. And I was kind of getting wrapped up in that initially, where I was kind of like, yeah, the county's messing with this. And I finally said, whoa. How do I feel about this? You know, how's it making me feel? Okay, you know, I'm bummed out and I'm upset, but that's not going to get me anywhere. And for one, I can't control what the county does. So I need to step back and figure out how I can deal with this situation more. So I knew I wasn't going to be able to control anybody else. I could just control sort of how I dealt with the situation. So I stepped back to that wider perspective level, looked at things more as an observer, and I said, okay, what do I need to do here? I reached out to a couple friends that have been in similar situations, got in contact with a guy who's kind of like a permit chaser, per se. He had a business partner who's a commercial architect, so I get these guys on board, and boom, what do you know, like, they get the permit for us, right? So rather than just sit there and spin our wheels and trying to control things that I couldn't control by being upset, I just stepped back, used that emotion to kind of like help see where I needed to go, and then the logic helped me get through that place, if that makes sense. And there's been, you know, constant situations over these last handful of months where, you know, the contractors told me we were going to be done in X amount of time, and it's now taken 4 times that time. And, you know, in the meanwhile, I'm still paying rent on the space, but I don't have any control over that. So, you know, when these delays come up with the contractor, I just sit down and I very calmly ask him, like, okay, what are we doing in this situation? What are we looking at? What's our delay? You know, and then I have to deal with discussing that with clients of mine that are already signed up and waiting to get started. But it's just the process, right? And I can only control myself and the way that I deal with the situation. I can't really control any of the other variables in the situation. And that's, I think, where a lot of frustration and anger comes in for people, is that they get focused on controlling the things that they can't control, right? Or they're just not even trying to control them, but they're just focusing on the things that they can't control. You know, like, think about when you miss a flight at the airport. What does everybody do? They take it out on the person working the counter, as if that person personally made them miss their flight. Well, it's not that person's fault, right? And you can't control that the flight got missed. So, if you want to be that pissed off person because you think that's going to get you an extra flight and an extra credit, that's fine. Let that energy get into your life. For me, I rather just let it slide off, go up. 50 people have just screamed at this person at the counter. I'm gonna go up, I'm gonna smile, I'm gonna take a minute to ask them, like, hey, how's your day? I know it's rough, but listen, I'm here to be a little reprieve for you. I'll try to make this as easy as possible. I understand you're doing the best that you can. And that typically tends to change their mood, and I get treated better, right? But again, all I'm doing is controlling how I act in that situation and instead of trying to step up and control that person, right? And so think about that in times of your life where maybe stuff was tougher or didn't go the way you wanted or got delayed because you were trying to control things outside of yourself. And then think about times where things did go smooth because you just stepped back, were in observation, in like that observational, perception level, and that allowed you to be a little more active as you weave your way through the obstacles and the course that's laid out for you. So hopefully that kind of helps a little bit. Again, like I said, I really like to look at emotions and logic as tools that balance each other out. I feel like balance is a huge one. I'm probably going to talk about balance tomorrow morning, whether it's, the yin, the yang, the masculine, the feminine, the positive, the negative, the black, the white, the dark, the light. It doesn't matter. Like, there's balance in nature, and it's always swinging one way or the other. But hopefully this little talk will help you find a little more balance and a little more ease in dealing with certain situations that maybe you're struggling with now, or things that will pop up soon. But again, just control you. Focus on what you can do in the situation, not try to control other people, because other people have their own free will, and other people are going to do what they want. And sometimes when you try to control them, you're only going to make things worse for yourself. So enjoy the rest of your day. I'm going to take in this nice, cool morning and finish my walk, and talk to you next time.